Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Shoot 1 Up DX for the Nintendo Switch. And if you didn't know, this one is actually a mobile port over to the Switch from a handful of years ago, and even though graphically and even game durationally it does seem to be a little bit more on the mobile aspect, it's actually still a pretty fun game. As you might expect from a space shooter style bullet hell game, the general story deals with saving the world from some alien horde, and that's pretty much all you really get to go on, or all you really need to go on to complete your mission. But as simple as the general mechanics of the game are, being a general forward progression and holding down the fire button to blast every single alien enemy that comes into the screen, there are a few pretty unique things that Shoot 1 Up DX has thrown into the mix in order to make it a much more enjoyable experience than you might expect from the kind of stagnant formula of the typical shoot 'em up. The first of which, and definitely the most pronounced in the gameplay, is that every time you pick up an extra life, it doesn't just augment your ship or give you an extra time to die, it adds one more ship to your squadron. And so as you destroy enemies swarming across the screen, you'll have a random chance to encounter a 1-up, which essentially adds not another gun, but another entire ship. And so as the lead player, you're in command of the entire formation. There are easier modes of gameplay that allow you to encounter 1-ups much more often, but no matter if you're playing in easy, hard, or normal difficulty, the max cap you can get on your formation is 30 ships. And the more ships you get, the more firepower you have. But past certain thresholds, you'll also be shooting from the rear and to the right and the left. But one other cool dynamic is the fact that you can actually spread or compress the organization of your ships as you see fit in order to account for the more relaxed or more hectic volleys of fire. Spreading your ships out does give you much more firepower, as they can all link together to form some master blast that shoots forward across the screen. But in addition to the ability to compress your ships down into a single silhouette, you might also need to use the braking button to be able to navigate around the game when it gets really intense. At the end of each level though, as you might expect, there is the stereotypical boss fight. And while we might expect from games like Space Invaders or even Super R-Type for the boss to be somewhat larger but somewhat lodged toward a certain side of the screen, in Shoot 1 Up DX the bosses take up almost the entire screen, which means that you'll have very few chances to use any sort of spread out formation, and regardless of whatever your normal gameplay style is, you'll probably be forced to reduce your ship footprint and rely heavily on your ability to dodge. Before I mention though that there is a different mode of gameplay that spawns 1-ups almost infinitely throughout the game to get you really quickly to that 30 ship cap. And in addition to that mode of gameplay, there are a few other ways to change the gameplay style, whether that's speeding up the enemy encounters to 200% or slowing them down to 25%. And while this may make the game much more difficult or much more easy, it will of course impact the duration of the game as a whole. Which, in the beginning of the review, I did mention was a bit more on the mobile side, and by saying that I meant to imply that it's a little bit short. I'm not exactly super gifted at this gaming genre, and even I was able to trounce the final game's boss in about 15 to 17 minutes. But before you completely dismiss the game saying that that's just way too short to possibly be any fun, it certainly is short, but that doesn't mean that it's not a fun game. There are different modes of gameplay. You can speed up or slow down. There's also leaderboards as well as local co-op. And so if you are a fan of the kind of space shooter bullet hell style games, but you also know yourself and don't know that you have about 14 to 16 hours to take down a giant space invasion, well, maybe a challenging micro indie is exactly what you're in the market for. I mean, who doesn't enjoy the idea of finishing a sandwich and beating a game all on their lunch break? Graphically though, the game hasn't really changed much since its original mobile release. The sprites aren't terribly crisp and the background isn't super vivid, but for these types of games where there's just endless numbers of enemies and bullets flinging across the screen, you're probably not really gonna notice much of a difference even if it were true to life graphics. And so in that sense, though it's probably not the best resolution it could be, it's not much less than what you need. As far as the audio package is concerned, even though it is a really short game, nothing about it seems repetitive at all. And the music is decidedly high energy and intense, and keeps you locked into that frame of mind of just the frantic nature of the game. But of course, as with everything in the world, there is still room for critique and improvement. And first and foremost, though this is a very short game, the first critique is probably not its length. And as it is an indie game, I know that that's probably coming as a big surprise, but its first critique would probably have to be its visual presentation. Shoot 1 Up DX is a frantic space shooter, and there's always so much going on in the screen that having the graphics be a little bit more crisp probably would have been very helpful. Especially considering that it was released nearly a decade ago for a different platform, we'd expect a little bit of retooling to bring it to a more modern system. But like I said before, it really doesn't affect the gameplay, it's just something you would have expected a little bit of extra care to be put into to kind of just increase the quality of life for the player. The second consideration, though, would be the game's length. There's only a couple of bosses and it only takes a couple of minutes to beat. And so while it is fun to get an easy, cheap victory for a really small game, even with the replayability, even with the multiplayer functions, even with the different type of gaming modes, if you're not explicitly chasing those leaderboards, then you're probably not going to see much intrinsic replayability. And at this point I will put my own score on the screen so you can easily dethrone me. But moving on and taking a step back and taking a look at Shoot 1 Up DX as a whole gaming experience, I would be lying if I didn't say I had a great time with it. I plugged it in and I was a little surprised that the game was over when it was over, but I immediately went back in, changed the difficulty levels, tried to research how to open up and unlock those different ships, and really did have a good time just experimenting with game settings, speeding things up, slowing things down, playing on hard mode. And it was really, really fun playing with all 30 ships in that one gaming mode with extra lives. And while I am definitely going to be sharing this game with some of my friends, I think most of my enjoyment after having beaten the game only a handful of times already is likely going to come from watching my friends play it more than me playing it myself. And that again stems from the fact that I'm not really a super scoreboardy kind of challenge gamer myself. It's just not how I do. But if you do like pushing your own personal best limits on insanely difficult games, if you do like chasing those global leaderboards, then even though Shoot 1 Up DX is a pretty simple and short game, it's probably going to be a pretty great time. But if you're looking something with a big campaign and with some character development and with a real story to chase and a real final boss to beat, then you might be a little bit disappointed by Shoot 1 Up DX's quick duration and its pretty quick fruition. But anyway, that does about bring us to the end of the review for Shoot 1 Up DX now on the Nintendo Switch. So if you enjoyed the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a like or a comment to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. Because there are new and unique indie games coming out literally every single day, and whether for you personally it's an easy hard pass or an absolutely unforgettable gem, chances are if it's on the Switch, you're gonna find out about it right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.